I still don't hear anything.
You still don't hear anything?
I hear you now. Peace.
All right. Oh. Peace, sister. Please forgive me, those who are viewing. We had some technical difficulties. I had to do some adjustments. So welcome, sister. You know, we are the Northeast Political Prisoner Coalition, and this episode is dedicated to educating our children, our youth, our future about the importance of women and being that this is International Women's Month, Working Women's Month. So what's going on, sister? Peace and love.
Thank you for having me on your broadcast. It's a wonderful day. Today is the official International Women's Day. And so we must shout out our first mother, Dankanesh, for her service to us all. Without her existence, where would we be, right? And so peace and power to all the women that really understand the struggle to create a nation and to continue to building a nation, because without the woman and the man, a nation cannot stand. So it's the togetherness of us all.
Yes, that's very important. You know, prior to us coming on today, I was reading Mumia's book, We Want Freedom, right? And it gave a description and went into the history of the Black Panther Party. And it talked about the role of women in the Black Panther Party. And, you know, most of the party members were women. And this part stuck out to me, and I want to share it with you as well as the viewers. That said, women ran the Black Panther Party pretty much. I don't know how it came to be a male's party or thought of as being a male's party, because these things, when you really look at it in terms of society, these things are looked on as being women things, you know, feeding children, taking care of the sick and so yeah, we did that. We actually ran the Black Panther Party's programs. But I think that that's very important, right? Because when we dissect the Black Panther Party history, we look at Huey P. Newton, we look at Bobby Seale, and we look at those individuals and like who were at the forefront, but we forget or we don't talk enough about people like Afeni Shakur. We associate her with Tupac Shakur, but little did we know about her running a particular area of the Black Panther Party. So we have to acknowledge that, we have to salute that, and we have to embody those examples as we start to deal with each other, especially when we have to deal with male chauvinism and we have to deal with various things that try to put a woman in a certain place. So yes.
And unfortunately, our society has learned that from the larger society, right? This whole idea of patrilineage and men forward and woman in the background. She's in the kitchen, she's feeding the children, she's doing this and that, which is all important, but we all feed the children. It's not just the mom that's feeding the children. And I think that's where we've lost ourselves, because we continue to become part of their ideology versus looking at the ideology of our greatest ancestors, right? Because we seem to think that it did not exist through the educational system that we are given here, right? So we have to go out and do our independent research. And because of the way the larger society put men first, instead of putting us together, we are complements of one another. No one is behind one another. No one is ahead of one another. When we work together, we achieve. And that's what the Black Panther Party showed us. When we were together, when we were working together, we made more strides. We created more programs that the larger system absorbed at the end of the day. And we must acknowledge that.
That free breakfast program, even other things that we started, they would take over.
Right, the crossing guard system that we started in order to make sure that our kids can cross the street safely and get to school. The whole idea of medical centers, even the whole idea that Matula was sent to prison for over 40 years, right? He created a system, a drug treatment system, right? And then they said, oh no, he got RICO charges, that's why. But no, he was trying to create an environment to remove the drugs from our community and to help our people detox from the heroin, the crack, and whatever else was going on. But they didn't want us to create the future that we need to see, and we must acknowledge that in order for us to move forward as we're planning for our success, because we are going to be successful. They can't stop us.
Yes, exactly. Absolutely. We got plenty of work to do, and but we have to be in this together because it's a collective effort, and we can't forget that. A lot going on today.
I think your books want to be shown. I think you're going to have to give up on that.
Yes, exactly. It's one of those days, but we keep pushing. We're people that will fall down, but we get back up and we continue to do what we need to do. So we have to continue to move forward with today's program. We commit ourselves to learning about political prisoners and also those people who embody the spirit of political prisoners. Like there's this brother out in Queensbridge, right? His name is Sugar Ray, and he's doing a 14-day hunger strike to raise awareness about what's going on in the world and also about what needs to be done in the community. He's a local activist. He's going hungry and cold for 14 days of justice to acquire space in the Department of Education building at 44-36 Vernon Boulevard. It's just minutes away from Queensbridge, which is the largest public housing. So I had the opportunity to be around the brother. I'm going to go back over there and support what the brother's doing. And I think that when we look at what's going on currently, we can't forget about these people like him and others who embody the spirit of sacrifice as our political prisoners do. People like Reverend Joy Powell, people like Veronda Bowers, people like Mumia Abu-Jamal, Ed Poindexter, and we can't be afraid to advocate for their release because those are our freedom fighters, right? We were not put in this position of oppression non-violently. It was a violent procedure that got us into this position. So we have to understand that, and when we when we strike back and stand up and fight back, people want to tell us how we should fight back, and that's a serious deterrent from our right to self-determination. So that's why when we look at our freedom fighters and we look at the certain charges that they were been brought up on, we got to ask ourselves who is saying what about who, and who determines what's right and who determines what's wrong. And oppression is wrong, liberation is right. So you have to choose a side that you're going to be on. So, we commit ourselves to fighting and struggling for our political prisoners. And this episode and all our episodes really, but this episode particularly was focusing on educating our children. You're an educator, and how you educate our children on our freedom fighters, our political prisoners.
I make them real. I make them understand who they are, right? Not looking at the charges that put them in there, but I discussed the idea that these are your grandfathers. Little do you know, right? And how would you feel if your grandfather was placed in this place because he advocated for the liberty that you're having right now? You want clean water. Hey, your grandfather advocated for clean water. You want, a safe playground. These are the things that your grandfather and or grandmother advocated for you. And because she or he spoke up, they put him or her in these confinement systems because they don't want us to speak up. Now, how do you support them for speaking up for the privilege that you have today? And making them real changes the dynamic, right? They remain interested. I remember I was like, oh, Matula, like one of my students always say, you always talk about Matula being so handsome. And I said, yeah, look at my grandpa, so handsome. He's debonair. And so they remember those things. They put that coalition, what's the word? Not coalition, but they put that combination together so that they're like, yes, grandpa went to jail for doing this, that, and the third. Now, if that was my grandpa, what do I need to do for my grandpa? What do you need to do? You need to send him a letter. You need to write him a card. You need to get other people to write letters, other people to recognize that your grandpa is there, your grandma is there because they sacrificed something for you to exist today. And when you make our story real for children, they embody the story and they understand the struggle. And too many times we don't make things real for even ourselves. We make it seem like it's just a foreign concept. Oh, he's out there selling drugs because he wants to sell drugs. No, there's a whole system around why someone is doing something that's terrible to the community. Understand that and work to solve and create a solution so that we can better our community.
Yes, that's an excellent point. You said make it real. I know me as a parent of an 18-year-old, a couple of years ago, he came home from school and told me that the teacher said they couldn't write about Malcolm X because he was bad and violent. And, under the leadership of the sisters, because it was his mother and another parent at the time that led the march. I just jumped aboard when they was when they initiated the marching. And then I participated. I was only using it as a way to educate him about the importance of us educating ourselves. But then I understood that, we have to look at every situation as an opportunity to advocate for our heroes. You don't tell us who our heroes are. You don't tell us who we should and should not acknowledge and salute. We determine that. And we determine that based on our own understanding, based on our evaluation of our history, and we make a commitment to doing that. And we not only do it for ourselves, but we do it for the next generation, because that's what our responsibility is to the next generation. Just as we come into our current time, not knowing what we know based on who taught us prior. So, sister,
and on the point of Malcolm X, could you just imagine Malcolm's grandson being in school? He is no longer here, and his name is slipping my mind right now. But his grandson in school, in his home, everyone is paying homage to his grandfather, right? And then going to school, and everyone is saying what your son heard. My grandfather was bad, my this, my that. That whole cognizant dissonance that happens. And when we don't create an environment for our children to understand that, those folks are always going to say someone else is bad in the story when it's not them. And they are the worst ones in the story. So they make us focus on ourselves as being evil. And this is why we sometimes, we can see our whole people always wanting to be accepted by them and forgetting our own story. But accepting from them is actually hurting our children. I could say that even me as, at my age, 40, that even when I was going to school and they did that same thing, that my parents didn't have the solvent and the courage to be like, no, they're crazy. You're right. You know what I mean? Understand your story. And until our generation becomes strong enough to tell the future generation that it's okay to embrace their story, we are going to actually continue the demise that we're in. But I don't see that. I see so much courage in our story. We just need to be courageous enough to say that they're crazy, you're not. Our story means so much because there was more sacrifices done from our people, wherever they are, on whatever continent they live on. There are more sacrifices for us than anywhere else. And we need to understand that a little bit better and be bold about it.
Right, exactly. We got to be courageous, bold. We got to understand that, another generation is watching, and they either going to learn from us or not. And it's up to us to decide that we're going to take that responsibility, and we're going to say, okay, this is what you need to do because this is what you're going to be faced with. You can't ignore certain issues because those issues are there to keep you where they want you kept. And unless you confront them in a way where you understand what's actually going on, then your life is going to be a lot more hectic than it has to be. And that's what I think the Black Panther Party meant. And I think that the political prisoners like Reverend Joy Power, she means for us, people like Veronda Bowers and so many other political prisoners. As they sit in prison, as we encourage them to stay strong, we encourage our viewers to write them. I encourage you to encourage your students to write them because as more of us write them, they feel more stronger. They feel more alive. We build that connection with them, that personal bond. So now wherever we at, we talking about political prisoners.
Right. And when we're writing to them, connect, really, truly don't write it, oh, thanks for the sacrifice. No, truly listen to what they are sacrificing. Oh my goodness. You were, trying to create a food program in the community where we grew our food, and this is why it was important to grow our food. And look, here I am growing my own food, showing her that I'm taking the step forward. I am not leaving your call to arms in your hands alone, but I am picking up that mantle as well. Once we truly connect with them, we definitely give them a different passion for continuing the sacrifice of their life behind bars, because they know that, hey, this person is still working on it. So it's like, now what are you going to do? You're going to jail us all? You're going to put us all in prison? Go ahead. Do that if that's what you think. But guess what? Someone else is going to come back and take you down. You just haven't been taken down yet, but you will be taken down. You cannot oppress a people like this for the rest of their lives and think you're going to survive. You're just not. And this is why their population rates continue to decrease, and why they're trying to create all these systems in our community to decrease our population rates. So it's about us truly embodying what our elders and ancestors sacrificed for and wrote about and talked about, because once we do that, we will be a better people.
Exactly, because once we neglect those who sacrifice for us, then we put ourselves in a serious detrimental position. And I think that that's why we have to really look deeper into our freedom fighters, our political prisoners, because the state, those who are responsible, those who continue to hold them captive, because we have to use that term captive because this is a war. It's been a war since the first Africans said no, their refusal to be a slave in bondage for the duration of their lives. So we've been in that war, and that war led a number of casualties, our political prisoners and our martyrs. So when we talk about our freedom fighters, our political prisoners, we have to make sure we let them know that we acknowledge them as freedom fighters, because the state says that there's no political prisoners in the United States, that these people are criminals, they're terrorists, and they are held captive because they committed a criminal act. And, when we look at the term correctional facility, we say, how long does a correctional process take place, if it's truly that? Because you have people like Rochelle McGee been incarcerated for, 60 years now? And it's ridiculous, because you know how much tax dollars that went into keeping him captive for so long. At some point we have to be like, it's a revenge sentence, not a just sentence.
Right. And they're keeping these people captive because they understand that these people could awaken passions and desires in people. So this is why when we study their story, we could awaken the passion and desire within ourselves. The whole idea that we need one person to be our leader. We don't need one person to be our leader. We are all the leadership that we're looking for. We just have to be able to pick up the baton and say yes, and study their works and understand why they've been in prison. Once you understand the why, you can understand how you can do better for our people. That's all. And so many times we just don't want to understand the why. Oh, that's not important to us. What's important to me is having the flyest gear, or whatever ratchetness is happening on these social streets, and not what it means to your children, your children's children, 5 generations from now. What will the world look like if we continue to lay down and not stand up? Because 5 generations before us, our greatest grandparents didn't lay down. They fought. This is why we exist today. And yeah, we're going to have people that exist in 5 generations, but what are they going to be existing for?
Wow, that's an incredible point. People need to understand that. They need to be driven to the point where you have to take some action on the change that you want, right? And the change that we know we want is we want our political prisoners home. We want to be further enlightened by them. We want to take care of them. We all can contribute something. $1 from 100 people is $100. So we all have that as a collective. And that $100 can help that political prisoner be taken care of in a certain way, whether it's food, clothing, or a contribution to the shelter. But we have to think like that as a collective, because if somebody made a sacrifice and now they're in a situation where they are removed from their regular or their routine life because of their sacrifices, and we have to ask ourselves, how are they going to feel about that if they're being ignored? So we have to do our duty, our responsibility, educate our children about our political prisoners, and continue this fight. Sister, we wind it down. We usually commit a half an hour every week. So,
okay,
your closing remarks.
Don't think of them as prisoners of war. Think of them as your grandparents and your grandmothers. Think of them as your mother and your father. These are the people that did something for you to exist today. If you think of them, if you make the connection of family, will be steps ahead. Family, it takes us together to do something great. Brother, thank you for having me on the show. And let's continue building and growing so that the future generation, 5 generations from now, they're like, this is what my great-grandparents did. Yeah.
Thank you.
They didn't lay down.
Appreciate your patience with the technical difficulties. We got through it, and we made an incredible episode, documentation of what should be done. So peace and love to you, sister.
Peace. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Free